Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. And while you're at it, shoot over if you are a Facebook user and you are sick and tired of spending $60 to $100 every single year buying the newest, latest, greatest wrestling game. Stop. Don't do it anymore. Check out Wrestler Unstoppable on Facebook right now, where you can fully customize your own wrestler, get involved in storylines, sign contracts, negotiate with other companies, create your own company, headline pay-per-views, and do everything that you could possibly want to do in the world of professional wrestling, all for free. Don't pay $1. Check out Wrestler Unstoppable on Facebook today. And while you're at it, if you want to become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast Patreon family, go to patreon.com/Pro Wrestling Podcast and help us out today. Special thanks as always to our number one Patreon member, Harold in St. Louis. Thank you, buddy, for being a part of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. We are going live tonight at 10:05. A lot of things got in the way today, but hey, I want to get something out to you guys anyways. It is not the largest episode of the world tonight. There's things going on. We're going to discuss those, but not going to be a full hour tonight. So just giving you that ahead of time. If you have questions, comments, concerns, anything you want us to talk about in today's episode, by all means, feel free. Give us a call at the Pro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160. Let us get your questions. Anything that you want to contribute. Remember, this podcast, as much as I like to be on here, it's all about what you guys want to hear. So if you have some suggestions, as we started doing a couple episodes ago, we have a fan question section of the show. I put the questions for tonight are up on the website right now. If you've never been to the website, it's frowrestling.com. Check that out if you want to see all the topics that we're going to discuss in any particular episode. They are always posted there ahead of a show, just so you guys can see what it is we're going to talk about. And if you have any comments ahead of time, by all means, put them in there. Put them into the sound off line. Let us know, and that way we can get your information out on the show as well. I'm going to get started tonight with WCW Thunder. Yes, the show that used to air on Thursday nights on TNT. It was WCW's B show, kind of the equivalent of what SmackDown is supposed to be, and it had a lot of talent. I remember hearing back when Thunder first launched, or shortly after it launched, that was one of the big reasons that Eric Bischoff pursued Bret Hart so hard, is he wanted to fill more huge talent on Thunder and make it a whole nother brand of its own. And they really had some amazing matches on Thunder. And WWE, when they purchased WCW, they acquired the entire Thunder library. Now, many people have noticed you don't find Thunder episodes on the WWE network, and there's a reason for that. It was talked about recently, recently as a month ago, that they were talking about adding Thunder and a few other WCW shows to the network, so you can get those just like you do Nitro episodes, etc. But that in light of all the CTE concussion lawsuits being pending against WWE, in conjunction with the other lawsuits from people like Buff Bagwell and Raven about royalties owed, that they're holding off on launching Thunder episodes on the WWE network. That until this is settled in court as to what is owed to who for what purpose, WWE is going to hold off on putting a lot of that content on the network, which is really a shame, because if you are a diehard wrestling fan and you are going back and trying to, for lack of better terms, relive the glory days of the Attitude Era, Thunder was a big part of that, and it's going to be very hard for people who either weren't fans at the time or who have recently become fans who want to know more about that product. It's going to be harder for them to be able to do that without being able to see those Thunder episodes. So hopefully, look, here's what it boils down to. When wrestlers have signed contracts all throughout the history of wrestling, even if you leave the company, you continue to get royalties from whenever you appeared on one of their syndicated television shows, if you were in one of their Coliseum home video library productions or something of that nature. When the WWE network launched, it was very different, because it's not something where somebody is paying for a video, or they're not paying for one show on pay-per-view, or it's not the weekly episodic shows that everybody can tune in and see. It's very different. This is a subscription style thing, and let's face it, there are some shows on the network that make a significant amount of money. There's other ones that are virtually never watched. I'm sure that there's probably not a lot of people tuning in to watch, gosh, who am I trying to think of? Nature Boy Buddy Rogers win the WWF World Championship on the network. That's not something that's going to be a hot button topic. So, the estate of Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, what would they sue for? And they're not suing. Let me just be clear. I'm just throwing out a hypothetical. You got people like Raven and Buff Bagwell complaining that they're owed more money because their likeness was shown on the network. I do understand where they're coming from. When you perform for a professional wrestling company, you're under the assumption that when your footage is reused, that you're going to be compensated in some way. And I actually think they absolutely deserve something. I think that WWE continuing to profit from other people's efforts, especially when it wasn't even originally a WWE product, I completely get why those wrestlers feel that they should be entitled to something. Now, here's one of the more unique angles in this particular situation. Many WCW talents were not signed to WCW contracts. Some of their contracts were signed to AOL Time Warner or to Turner Broadcasting rather than the actual wrestling company. And what WWE purchased was the WCW intellectual property, tape libraries, etc., some of the contracts and whatever. But some of the wrestlers, their contracts weren't for WCW wrestling. Okay, so if you're going to sue, you got to sue for what you were paid for. And many of these people, Kevin Nash has spoken about this in the past, have talked about how their contracts, they were independent contractors through the big corporation, not necessarily the wrestling company. So whether or not you have a right to intellectual property on something, I understand why you would think you would. I don't know legally, and I'm not a legal expert. I could be way off. I don't know if you do or not. I certainly see whether they have some valid points. They think, I performed, I deserve some cash. But how long does that go on for? Some of these guys have sued, like I know Doug Summers has sued WWE very much for the same thing, not liking the way he's been depicted in different DVD sets and whatnot. So that's a separate issue, but that also lends to this situation. Wrestlers who are from yesteryear who still want to continue to get paid, and you got to wonder how long that goes on for. And if I was WWE, and it's just my opinion, I had a discussion about this with a colleague of mine who is a huge wrestling fan as well. If I was WWE, I would make offers to all former talent who have filed these lawsuits, and I would say, listen, let's come to a contractual agreement as to how much you get paid per view of your particular video on the network. Now, here's the thing. Buff Bagwell. We'll take Buff Bagwell for a great example. I would guarantee you that probably the most watched Buff Bagwell segment is from WWE Monday Night Raw when he wrestled Booker T in that god-awful wrestling match, his only match really on WWE television, and at the end of the show, that's when Stone Cold and them throw him out the back, and he's never seen on WWE television again. That's probably his biggest exposure on the network. I'm sure he's on episodes of Nitro and whatnot, but what do you want to get paid for that? Even when Nitro was here, was Buff Bagwell the reason people tuned into Nitro? So at some point you have to look at what is the financial gain. What people are tuning in to see you, and what people are tuning in to see something else that happened to be on the show, and you just were in the peripheral, in the background. Okay, I could tell you when NWO Red and Black debuted, Buff Bagwell made an appearance for them and stuff, and I you can't convince me they weren't tuning in to watch Kevin Nash want to go toe to toe with Hulk Hogan, and Buff Bagwell standing in the background. Should he get paid for that? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that. But I think that at least there are so many layers to this that you can't make a snap judgment as to whether or not these guys deserve something or not. I think if I had to make a decision, I would lean towards giving them something. But if I was, like I said, if I was WWE, I would come up with some kind of contractual offer to compensate them so they can go away. I understand Vince McMahon coming out for the angle with Kevin Owens saying how he, talking about how many lawsuits he hasn't lost. I get that, but do you really want to spend all this legal money to do this? Then again, if you start paying people for everything they did in the past, how many wrestlers have there been? Gosh, PWI does an issue every year talking about the top 500 wrestlers in the world. There have been thousands of wrestlers and footage of many of, if not all of them, and WWE owns most of that footage. They'd be sending contracts to every estate and active wrestler in the world. So I understand where they're coming from, not wanting to pay those royalties. We'll have to wait and see what the legal process does. Going to move on to a much more pressing issue. Kevin Owens is in kind of a dilemma right now as far as booking is concerned. He's not a part of the long-term plan for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship on SmackDown. It is obviously going to stick with Jinder Mahal until John Cena faces him in January. I anticipate Cena will win the championship in January and then lose it again in February at the what is that? The Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, just like last year. It'll give him his 17th win. He'll break the record, and then somebody else will take the title there, and probably either AJ Styles or Nakamura, and then they will face each other at Mania. So that's the long-term booking plan. I've said that before. But Kevin Owens, probably one of the brightest spots on the SmackDown brand, especially after this heinous attack on Vince McMahon and this feud he's got lined up with Shane McMahon. There's rumor out there now that Kevin Owens may be shipped over to Raw. That Stephanie McMahon coming out on SmackDown to check on her father may be the impetus of a move for Kevin Owens to go to Raw. I can't even describe how horrible this would be. SmackDown is doing everything it can to be on the level with Raw. There are many weeks I think SmackDown's got a significantly better show than Raw. I think their women's division is significantly better than the Cruiserweight division. I think their women's division is better than Raw's women's division. I think their tag team storyline is significantly better, including the Fashion Files. Their world champion blows. That's just my opinion. Now, I don't have a problem with him personally, and I think he's actually doing a pretty good job as champion, but the championship itself and the way it's been portrayed, it's almost like it's the United States Championship, and the U.S. title has actually had more prominence on the show, and Kevin Owens, who's not even a champion, has had more prominence on the show than the world champion. So if there is one thing that they're having an issue with, it would be that. But when you look at Raw, the Universal Champion's not even going to be on the show for a few months. There was talk of him maybe not coming back till January. So, both brands have an issue with not promoting their number one championship. But I think moving KO to Raw is a horrible idea because SmackDown needs as much talent as possible to be a legit threat to Raw viewership. Not because there's a legit war between the two brands, because WWE needs there to be the perception that there's a war between the brands to drive viewership to both shows, to make both shows must-see television. Kevin Owens going to Raw puts another megastar at the top of an already stacked Raw roster. I know that there is huge opportunities for like Kevin Owens and Samoa Joe, or Kevin Owens and Brock Lesnar, or Kevin Owens and Braun Strowman. There's so many matches you could do on Raw. I get it. Kevin Owens and Finn Balor. But what you have to remember is we've got some really great emerging stars and established stars on SmackDown who have to have opponents. Who is AJ Styles supposed to feud with whenever he finally wins a championship? Or Shinsuke Nakamura? Nakamura versus Kevin Owens is a pay-per-view level match we haven't seen yet. That needs to happen at some point. Baron Corbin is emerging at some point. He's going to get in Kevin Owens' face. That needs to happen. So if you move KO, who are you moving to SmackDown? You got to put somebody there to replace him if you move him. And John Cena is not the answer. In his own words, obviously, he's not going to be around as much as he used to be, so I don't want to see that be the solution. We need to make sure if they're going to move Kevin Owens to Raw, move somebody else to SmackDown. And I have a suggestion for that a lot of people are not going to like. But it is purely my suggestion because they teeter between being a babyface and a heel. And nobody knows from week to week whether they should cheer or boo or what. I would move Braun Strowman to SmackDown. Because Braun has faced almost no one on that brand, and because he could play the tweener role, he could just conquer everyone, take that world championship, and make it a legitimate focal point for SmackDown. He's a huge draw on Raw, and since they're so stuck on Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, Braun Strowman, as I've said before, is the most organically grown talent in WWE right now. He's like the Goldberg or the Stone Cold Steve Austin of WWE right now. You need to capitalize on his popularity, not stifle it because you want to push Brock Lesnar so much and Roman Reigns. Move him to SmackDown. Move him to SmackDown, let him tear that entire show apart. And while you're doing it, create someone else who eventually will become the one to rise up and defeat him for the world championship. I don't exactly know who that is. There's a variety of talents that could be. But in the meantime, you would have storyline plans as he took on each person in that brand that would take you well into next year. And by then you can create somebody or move somebody else over there if you had to. But can you imagine seeing a Braun Strowman versus AJ Styles or a Braun versus Nakamura? Some of those matches need to happen. Going to move on to Randy Orton. Speaking of SmackDown, he had some issues this week. He put out there that he wants to turn heel again because he's tired of this babyface nonsense. And, you know, I understand what Randy Orton's saying. He does make a fantastic heel. I don't think he ever stopped wrestling like a heel. I mean, if you think about it, when he was feuding with Bray Wyatt, he pretty much broke up the Wyatt family and did all this sadistic stuff, yet he was the babyface. Even at WrestleMania with all the creepy stuff with the slugs and everything in the ring, and it just... Randy Orton always feels like a heel. Then you go to the House of Horrors match. He was clearly a heel in that, even though he was supposed to be the babyface. And it's one of those situations where I think he works better as a heel. I get what he's saying. He doesn't like to have to play off the crowd reaction and try to get the big ovations. I, though, think that Randy Orton is being lazy, wanting to be heel. I think when you go heel because you can't pull off the babyface thing, it's because you have not taken it upon yourself to fully engulf yourself in being the babyface. Randy Orton can get over huge if he tried. He doesn't try. And his matches seem much more lackluster now than they used to. It's almost like he's phoning them in. You remember Randy Orton when he was feuding with Triple H and he put Stephanie McMahon into that middle rope DDT? And he dropped her on her head right in front of her husband and her father and everything else. Like, that was the Randy Orton that was just out of this world, out of control. And he's done things like that before. Remember when he won his first world championship from Chris Benoit at SummerSlam? He was fantastic in that match. And right afterward, when he turned babyface for the first time, he was over huge. But it's all in the booking and how much he accepts the position he's given. And I think right now he's in a good spot if he tries to make it work. He could easily be back in the world title picture in the blink of an eye. I'm going to talk a little bit about Eric Bischoff. Bischoff is in the news this week, not for himself, but comments he made on his podcast in reference to the issues going on with the Bullet Club. You know, as many of you know, Monday night, the Bullet Club, meaning Hangman Page, Cody Rhodes, Brandy Rhodes, the Young Bucks, and Marty Scurll all showed up at Raw and did a pseudo-invasion. I actually forgot to mention this on the last episode, but when they showed up and they were interviewing fans were talking so much about how tickets were being given away for free. That's how horribly the tickets are moving for WWE right now. And so the Bullet Club show up at Raw, and Vince McMahon is livid about this. He's thoroughly upset about this. And I think it's such a missed opportunity. And I said on the last episode, I thought they should have brought him into the building. Let him come in. Get some exposure. Let Ring of Honor capitalize on WWE exposure. And Eric Bischoff this week completely supported what I said. I'm glad I said it, and I launched that episode before he said it. They should have opened the doors and welcomed them in. Let them get in the ring. Let them have a physical altercation with the WWE locker room. Because you know they're going to eventually retreat. And when they leave, your show is the one that got the huge, monstrous pop in the ratings. But here's the other thing. If you go and obviously this was not planned out ahead of time, otherwise Vince wouldn't be upset. But if you're Ring of Honor and you find out that your world champion and his cronies are going to a WWE show and they're getting you that monstrous exposure, you better believe Ring of Honor's head of talent relations would be talking to the wrestlers about what they were doing, and then the company as a whole would be contacting WWE, and the first thing they would do is apologize, and WWE, if they were smart, would say, hey, no, you gave us a huge ratings boost. Now let's work out a deal to continue this thing. See, it's not 1985 anymore where WWE had to be all gun-shy about mentioning other companies and acknowledging other companies. When Sting was on the Stone Cold podcast, they talked about TNA. When other people, AJ Styles have been on the Stone Cold podcast, they've talked about New Japan Pro Wrestling. When wrestlers come out now, when Brock Lesnar walks to the ring, JBL used to say, this is a man who conquered UFC. He conquered New Japan Pro Wrestling, the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, and all these things. So they mention other companies now. So if you're going to do that anyways, why wouldn't you take an opportunity? Your ratings are sinking. Your viewership is down. You need to do something unconventional to bring people back and make wrestling mainstream. The Young Bucks have been selling merchandise at Hot Topic and been gaining popularity like you wouldn't believe. They're filthy rich on the independent scene. They don't need WWE to call them to get a paycheck. But can you imagine what it would do to WWE's ratings to have the Young Bucks come out, Hangman Page, Cody Rhodes, Marty Scurll, they show up in the ring, they attack somebody, and you start an interpromotional brand war. Of course you have to negotiate the logistics. WWE has to be big enough to let a few of the Ring of Honor guys go over, and Ring of Honor has to be big enough to let their world champion lose in a WWE ring. because WWE is the global conglomerate. They are the bigger company, and whether you, me, or anybody else likes it, they do have the best talent in the world. That doesn't mean they put on the best matches, but they do have the best talent in the world. And anybody who questions me on that, I encourage you, check out Cesaro's matches before he came to WWE. Look at Kevin Owens before he came to WWE. Look at AJ Styles. Look at El Generico, which is Sami Zayn. Look at all these talents who've come to WWE. They are now WWE. And for people who are like, no, independent wrestling's so much better, that's what you have now. You know what WWE is? It is the stars of independent wrestling all coming together under one umbrella. That's what WWE has become. Eric Young, Bobby Roode, all these people. So with that being said, what you need to do is, if you're WWE, you need to make this Bullet Club thing work for you, not against you. You know, bring them in, let them do an angle, work with Ring of Honor, work out an agreement, a working relationship, because it's what's best for business. The whole moniker you guys ran on for a couple years, best for business, this really is. And even someone as intelligent as Eric Bischoff, who, by the way, when WWE invaded WWE invaded Nitro years ago during the Monday Night Wars, Eric Bischoff himself will admit that he should have opened the doors and let him walk in, because it would have been done on their show. And that whoever gets the highest views is the one who wins the war, not the one who came up with the cool storyline. So, missed opportunity for WWE. On the topic of the Young Bucks, though, you know, the Young Bucks have been doing it for years. They do this hand gesture in honor of the NWO. They do the Too Sweet wolf pack looking hand gesture. And WWE has actually sent them a cease and desist letter telling them that they own the intellectual property to a hand gesture, which is absolutely ludicrous. The United States government and our copyright laws seriously need to be rethought. When someone can't even put up a wolf symbol, which, by the way, has been out since the Dark Ages, people have used that hand symbol. Who the heck is WWE to act like it belongs to anyone? If they want to do the crotch chop and a Too Sweet hand gesture and any other thing, more power to them. But because they sent this cease and desist thing, and WWE is a global conglomerate that has an entire legal department and team and master lawyers who can try to tear people apart, even though the case against the Young Bucks is super weak, what WWE knows is exactly what Vince McMahon said storyline kayfabe-wise to Kevin Owens, that they have enough money to win almost any lawsuit, and if they don't, they tie people up in court until they run out of money, and then WWE doesn't have to win lawsuits. The Young Bucks make good money, but they don't have enough money to go up against WWE. So instead, they've done two things. First off, all their Too Sweet merchandise, including ring-worn gear that says Too Sweet on it, they have up for auction, and all the proceeds will go to benefit charity. But then in response to the cease and desist, they have now released a brand new Bullet Club t-shirt that has cease and desist on it. And they've got the Too Sweet hand gesture, but it's blacked out with one of those censor bars. I think it is one of the greatest responses to a WWE bunch of nonsense I've ever heard of in the world of professional wrestling. So congratulations to the Young Bucks for standing up to WWE and giving them a big, yeah, I got to keep it PG, so I'll keep that to myself. You know what I was going to say. You know, stick it to them. Go for it, guys. Some news that actually frustrated me this week. After last week, when I was reading the articles and they were talking about how Robbie E was headed to the tapings in November for Impact Wrestling and he was going to be returning to television. Now, this week, Robbie E announced and Impact Wrestling confirmed that he has left the company. What an incredibly talented young guy. Hopefully he gets an opportunity with World Wrestling Entertainment. That's what I'm hoping for. It seems like he may be directing himself towards other ventures, but I hope not, because he does have so much to offer, and I think his experience in wrestling would be significantly better if he was in a place that had the production value that could really push someone like him. He'd be a great addition to the NXT roster. If he didn't go to NXT, put him on the main roster. Look, if you can keep Breezango out there and keep him relevant, you could do something with Robbie E. But kind of sad to see Robbie E leave Impact Wrestling. Same thing, Jesse Goddard's left a few months ago, so the bromance are gone. Let's reunite the two of them. You know, I know Jesse Goddard is doing a whole lot of things, too, outside of the world of professional wrestling, but put those two back together and bring them to WWE. We need some better tag teams anyways, and those guys had amazing chemistry. Going to talk about Jinder Mahal and Shinsuke Nakamura at Hell in a Cell in the cage. Or, I'm sorry, I apologize. They're not in the cage, which actually bothers me because they already had a traditional wrestling match at SummerSlam. This needed some extra sizzle, and they didn't get it. Now, people automatically are assuming that Shinsuke Nakamura has no chance of winning this match because Jinder has to have the title to go to Royal Rumble and face John Cena. I get it. However, what you need to do is you need to look at WWE booking. And in WWE's near-term booking needs, they're doing a tour of India, where they think Jinder Mahal is so over, even though a lot of Indian fans put out on Twitter and places like that they really don't like him all that much. WWE is convinced that he's an Indian star, and so there is a chance, there's conversation now about giving the World Championship to Shinsuke Nakamura, only to have Jinder win the title back in his home country of India, really popping the people and making it a high-impact title change, and really establishing Jinder as a top heel and a credible world champion. I hate that idea, because if Nakamura is going to get a run with the belt, give him a legit run with the title. But since I don't think that's going to happen, if at some point in time, wrestlers are judged based on their number and length of their championships. So Jinder needs to he's already surpassed Ric Flair and several other wrestlers for his length of his title reign. But it's time for Shinsuke to get at least onto the championship board outside of IWGP and New Japan. I'd be okay with the storyline. I hate it that he would lose it so fast. I think that's stupid, but who am I? I'm not one of their bookers. I'm not one of their creative geniuses who put together this stuff every week. So we'll have to see how they book it at Hell in a Cell. But as of right now, if I was a betting man, I'd still be betting on Jinder Mahal to retain. Kurt Angle in the news this week because he announced that he is already into WWE's drug testing protocol. Now, some people immediately assumed that this meant that he was going to be all set to go for a ring return. That is not the case. For those who don't remember, only a couple years ago, when Billy Gunn and Road Dogg were both agents for WWE and working at the Performance Center as trainers, Billy Gunn failed a drug test and he was not an in-ring active performer. He's never been back since. Because despite the fact that he's not an in-ring performer, they test a ton of their talent. Whether it's the trainers, the wrestlers, the ring crew, tons of people get tested at WWE. So I don't want people to read into that story and just automatically assume, since Kurt Angle is in drug testing protocol, that somehow he's ready to come back and wrestle. I do think, as does he put in the same interview, which, again, every week I got to do this because I don't want to get in trouble. Somebody gave me some attitude from one of the websites, and I won't mention which one, but the information that I disperse on this podcast, typically, you can find stories like these, WrestleZone.com, eWrestling News, PWI Online, F4W Online, Wrestling Inc., Cage Side Seats, Bleacher Report. There, I've given you all a shout out this episode. Please don't hate me, because I'm sharing the same stories that you guys have all shared with each other and on your sites. So, but Kurt Angle, his drug testing protocol entry really has nothing to do with an immediate return to the ring, but he did state that he believes that at some point he will go back into the ring. It's just waiting on Vince to make the decision. Going to move on to our contest that's coming up. We have really been trying to push the Patreon page at patreon.com/FroWrestlingPodcast. We would like to get some more traction with that. If you guys like what we do here on the Fro Wrestling Podcast, by all means, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to see you as Patreon members, but we want to give you guys an opportunity to do something special. Typically, the Patreon channel that we have, you got to contribute $50 a month to be able to do episodes with me live, and I don't want to do that this month. I want, for the month of October, if you're going to contribute at least $25, I'll be more than happy to do a live episode with you. We'll set up the episode, what we're going to talk about ahead of time, we'll communicate, get those things going, and we'll put you on live on one of our going live episodes. But for those who don't really have the opportunity to contribute $25 a month, we want to give something special to you guys. So we have a contest ready to go. If you contribute $10 a month, we're going to enter you in a contest. We're going to draw one of those people at random to be able to host a live episode with me for a Going Live episode as well. So if you want to contribute $25 or you want to throw in $10, $25 will get you on a live episode. $10 will make it so you would become an entrant into our drawing to be able to do a live episode and cover some of the cool topics in the world of professional wrestling on the Fro Wrestling Podcast. Also, don't want to forget to mention we have our tournament coming very soon, the upcoming Greatest Female Wrestler of All Time tournament. Stay tuned for details. If there is a female talent that you think I may have forgotten to put on the list, and as I say that, I'm thinking of one right now I got to add to the list, but If you think of somebody that needs to be added to the list, or and obviously I haven't published the list yet, but if you think of somebody you think I may have forgotten, somebody from yesteryear, let me know. Shoot me a message at that Pro Wrestling Sound Off line of 267-642-1160 and let me know. Look, I'm not perfect. I forget people here and there. When you start writing out these tournaments, it gets pretty labor-intensive, putting together brackets and everything else. So if you think of someone you would like to make sure that I have included, by all means, give me those names. I'm going to get to our fan questions section. I have 3 questions this week, and I'm going to get to the first one here. It says, what is the status of the New Japan North American expansion? It's a fantastic question. And here's the coolest part of the question. It's not even a part of the question. It has been probably 2 months since I've heard from my buddy, Barry Harry Larry. Barry Harry Larry is the one who sent that question in. I'll be honest with you. I thought Barry Harry Larry might have been Harold from St. Louis. I'm guessing from the fact that I got this message from a completely different phone number that is not the case. So, Harold in St. Louis, you're still my number one man. Love you to death. But Barry Harry Larry, welcome back to the show as well. Thank you for the great question. What is the status of the New Japan North American expansion? My understanding is they're targeting a spring 2018 for their next show, which in my opinion is a horrible decision. You got great traction from the first one. The American fans love your product. Don't wait 9 months to bring us another show. They need to do something very, very soon. Now, I know logistically it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. However, I will tell you this. We have in Europe and in North America, for Ring of Honor, for Rev Pro, and for various other promotions, we keep having matches with like Tomohiro Ishii, Jushin Thunder Liger touring the world, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Kazuchika Okada. These guys are going all over the place anyways. So if they're able to make these spot shows elsewhere, bring them together and put together. And if you don't have all the logistics in place, have Ring of Honor, with that amazing working relationship that New Japan has with Ring of Honor, put together a show right away for like December, right before Wrestle Kingdom. Have a U.S. Wrestle Kingdom or have something equivalent. All right, and use that as a platform to advertise the main Wrestle Kingdom card coming this year, Wrestle Kingdom 12. And I think that right now New Japan Pro Wrestling is missing the boat. Look, in Japan, they are the be-all, end-all of pro wrestling. Yes, All Japan Wrestling is there, Pro Wrestling Noah. There's other companies that are fantastic wrestling organizations, but nobody tops New Japan Pro Wrestling in Japan. So catering to that audience, those fans are going to come see you anyways. What you have here in the United States is a fan base that is dying for some amazing live action. Real wrestling, a company that still calls it wrestling, not sports entertainment. And that's what New Japan Pro Wrestling has. And what would be amazing is for them to get on board with going full-time, giving us some expansion here. Let's face it, if Impact Wrestling can tape 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks worth of television over 4 days, so can New Japan Pro Wrestling. Take care of it, come here, do the shows in America, record them, release them over time like you already do on Access Television, like they're doing right now with the G1 Climax. It ended a month and a half ago, and they're still showing matches. Do that here. Have a live show so the people who want to tune in and really pop the ratings can do that. But then after that's over, put out other episodes. The fans in America are dying for the New Japan product. We love your talent. If anyone can get this to New Japan, we love your talent. We love your matches. We love your style. We love the physicality, the talents that you have, the personalities, the storylines. It all works. I even loved your faction system with Chaos and Suzuki Gun and all the other factions you have. All right? Bring it. Bring it to North America. We need it. It's different. It's fresh. It feels good. And people who watch your episodes on Access Television have been dying for more newer content. I'm tired of turning on my DVR. I have a TiVo, and I turn on New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it says this episode's from 2016. I don't need that. And then, honestly, I've already read the spoilers and watched the matches on YouTube. I don't really want to rewatch the G1 Climax. I want new stuff. So every 3 months or so, come to the United States, tape a bunch of shows, and release them over time here, as well as your normal Access Television time slot. Just my opinion. My next question is from Sally Mae. which coincidentally is where I get all my college loans from. So interesting. Sally Mae, 64, and she's asking, do I have a match that I could recommend for a new fan who doesn't know what to look for in older wrestling matches? You know, coincidentally enough, I belong to a lot of wrestling fan groups on Facebook, and I saw almost the exact same question posed only the other day, and I responded with a match that I find to be thoroughly entertaining. Now, if you're looking for the pyrotechnics and you want the flashy glitz and glam like you have now in WWE, that I don't have for you. I mean, yes, there's plenty of matches you could do that with, but that's not what I'm going to. I like to look back at, you know, wrestling when it was just, it was down and dirty, and it looked real, and people really seemed like they were tearing each other apart. And when I think about that, the first match that popped in my head when I saw the question on Facebook, and when I'm seeing your question, is the Road Warriors taking on the Briscoe brothers. If you've never seen the match, by all means do it. It's for the National Tag Team Championship. I want to say recorded probably in around 82, 83, 84, somewhere in that time period. Great match. Fantastic. And you get to see the physicality of the Road Warriors combined with the technical savvy of the Briscoes. But the Briscoes are still able to throw down and brawl with the Road Warriors. I won't give you the ending to the match, but it's, you know, it's an interesting ending to the match. So if I had to recommend one for you to check out if you're a newer fan and you don't know some of those older matches, that would probably be one at the top of my list. That, and one that has always been very, very special to me. And I know I'm in the minority when I say that, but Kerry Von Erich taking on Jerry the King Lawler from Super Clash 3. I want to say 1988, I believe it was, off the top of my head. Fantastic match. Jerry Lawler going into the match was the AWA World Heavyweight Champion. Kerry Von Erich was the World Class Wrestling Association Heavyweight Champion, and this match was supposed to be a unification match between the two world champions for the one unified world championship. I highly encourage people to check that match out. If you've never seen it before, the backstory on it is Kerry Von Erich really, there's stories that he wasn't necessarily on the up and up, may have been on something going into the match, so much so that before the match even got started, he got a massive cut on his arm that wouldn't stop bleeding throughout the whole match. And it's that blood is only the tip of the iceberg in this match. It's an insane, bloody match, and a great piece of wrestling history. So check that out if you'd like. I'm going to go to my third question. Third question is from unknown, so I'm not entirely sure who it is. But it says, do you think WWE will ever get behind Sami Zayn and make him world champion? You know what? If you asked me that 3 months ago, I'd say absolutely not. They're killing him. They're burying him. Somebody must have soured on him. They don't like him. But I actually kind of like what they've been doing with him and Kevin Owens as of late. Kevin Owens attacking him with, putting his head in the chair and powerbombing him on the edge of the apron and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully, I actually would like it if they use that to write him off television. Get Sami Zayn off TV for a while, because that way he's away from Kevin Owens. Let Kevin Owens run the course with this whole Shane McMahon thing. If you're moving him to Raw or whatever, just do whatever you're doing. And then when you bring Sami Zayn back, then you can have him go after Kevin Owens again and reignite that feud. Right now, it feels it's just too repetitive. We've seen it too many times. But back to the actual question about whether or not he'll ever be world champion, I think so. I didn't think that before. But when you look at the SmackDown brand, Sami Zayn is believable to go against somebody like AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, Bobby Roode, Dolph Ziggler, Baron Corbin. Those guys are not of a size or a reputation where he couldn't hang with them. You put him on Raw, can you really see Sami Zayn defeating Braun Strowman? Or defeating Brock Lesnar? Or Roman Reigns right now? Even Seth Rollins or Dean Ambrose? Samoa Joe? I don't see him having any chance to defeat any of those guys. So I don't think he would ever get legitimately taken as a contender on Raw. But on SmackDown, yes, absolutely, I think he is a legit contender. He's a contender to the current world champion, Jinder Mahal. So yeah, I think Sami Zayn, I think they will get behind him at some point. I don't know if they'll, I won't guarantee they'll give him the world championship, but I do think that they will give him a substantial push at some point. I think they just need to find the right storyline to push him in an effective way. Don't forget, if you want to become a member of the Fro Wrestling Podcast Patreon family, go to patreon.com/Fro Wrestling Podcast. We'd love to have you, get you in our shout-outs on our episodes. That is all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next time. We'll run down all the latest wrestling news and rumors. Special thanks, as always, out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all of our music and sound effects that we use throughout today's show. Today's show is sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games by going to frowrestling.com and clicking the icon in the middle of the page. If you've never seen the game Sketchy People, I promise you, whether you're a child all the way to elderly, you would love this game. It is a fantastic game. Check that out. Absolutely click on the link in the middle of our page at frowrestling.com. Grab a copy. I want to say it's about like $34. So it's not the cheapest game in the world, but it is tons of fun, and I don't care who you are, you can have a good time with it. So check that out. And to alleyrepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. And for those who know anything about Mr. Fro here, I am the expert behind Fro Life Educational Planning. I am here to help you on your next path, whether that is a college, university, or you need additional training in some kind of higher education program or career technical program for that next career move. We can help you with that. Give us a call or shoot us an email. Go to our website at frolifeplanning.com and get in touch with us today so we can help you take that next step. Remember, Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you so much for taking a few moments with us today. If you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.thesportsjunkies101.com. That's THA, sportsjunkies101.com for the latest articles on the world of professional wrestling. And if you go there right now, I just released an article only yesterday talking about WWE's booking concerns, the problems with their booking right now, and the future planning. So check that out if you can. And until next episode, everybody take care and have a fantastic evening.